Welcome to a Rice University digital media production. For more information about us, please visit our website at www.rice.edu.
Okay, good afternoon. Please turn off whatever you have to turn off. If you have to leave, please leave at the back. If you don't leave, there will be a reception afterwards. So this is not a standard talk, okay? It's not about my latest and greatest piece of work. It's not a survey of my total set of accomplishment. It really is a presentation of a draft report by a working group, and it's called Request for Comments. In fact, in computer science, we have a tradition. All the internet documents are always issued as what's called RFC, Request for Comment. They're never finalized. We still have the internet, but all the documents are still RFC. So this is an RFC. Now, some of the points may be controversial, maybe not. But if you have questions in the middle, only if you really need clarification. But I hope we will have a vigorous discussion afterwards. So this is a working group. This is the set of people that are in the working group. The working group started somewhat larger, but people essentially voted with their feet about how much they care about the topic. So people that showed up, and many of them are here, and some other people dropped out, and they ultimately, this is the set of people who are putting their name behind the report. Now, just some background, we started in the fall of 2011, so it's about a year and a half ago, and the charge was to assess the processes and structures currently existing on campus designed to support and improve Rice research and scholarship effort, including strategy, support structures, assessment, coordination, and planning from the department level to the upper administration level. As any good working group, as soon as we got together, we shelved away the scope and the charge, and we got away with business, which is what do we really want to talk about. So I'm going to start from the recommendation, and then I'll go, so I'm starting from the end, and then I'll work my way from the beginning. So just you'll know what this is about. So this is the set of major recommendations. There are lots of small recommendations along the way. Right now at Rice, Paula Saunders is serving both as Vice Provost of Academic Affairs and Dean of Graduate Studies. And this is, we think these two jobs each deserve a full-time person. These are two, in some sense, the most important aspect of academic administration at Rice, academic affairs and graduate students, and each deserve a person who dedicate his or her full attention to the job. We need to have a systematic, rigorous, regular review process, and I will explain what I mean by all these adjectives. We really need to focus on school. We started POCing recently focused on departments, but we really need to focus on schools. We have to look at how we do business at this university. There are reasons to think that we can be much more efficient, and we'll probably need an outside eye to tell us how we can do better. And we need to, guess what? We finished one campaign. We should go and start the next one. But the next one, we really need to proceed with something called need assessment, and I'll talk more about it. Some philosophical point, the university usually describe how much we have accomplished, but nobody else is standing in place. So if we want to know where we stand, we have to look how much have we accomplished compared to how much our peers have accomplished. And guess what? They are all running. You have to run to stand in place. And if you look at point 1 and 3 of the V2C, point 1 is research and scholarship, and point 2 is graduate studies, will never be done. We'll have to continue to pursue them vigorously, in some sense forever. That's what we do. If we reflect on the last 10 years, our assessment is that the major effort in university has been on building physical infrastructure. We've put lots of building. We have very rich infrastructure now. And if you ask us what we need to do in the next 10 years, it's about human and organizational capital. And we are a bit too complacent. We must examine all aspects of university on a regular basis. We have to raise the bar, because if the bar is not continually raised, actually it's not in stasis, it declines. And we can never have too much communication between the administration and the faculty. University moves slowly, there's a lot of chatter, lots of discussions. Sometimes it is frustrating and tempting for administration to just get on with it and move ahead. But if we don't have continual feedback from one to each other, then university does not run well. OK, this was the executive summary. And now, if you are short of time, you can leave, or you can stay for the rest. And in some sense, this whole talk is about the mythical next level. So I've been hearing about the next level since I came to Rice. I came to Rice almost 20 years ago. The next level, with dreamy eyes. And the V2C start, we must visibly and substantially increase our commitment to our research mission and raise our research and scholarship profile. If you go and look at the history of Rice, this had been a perpetual wish. But it's somehow a pervasive sense that we are not quite making it to the next level. And there is a beautiful quote, and I've heard it from different sources. I don't know who is the real parent of this quote. Rice is perpetually perched on the precipice of greatness. Perpetually perched on the precipice of greatness. This has been floating around for a long time. Elisa should figure out who actually said it first. So what is the next level? So one is we have to try to put this feeling of next level in words. And we think we have something which is not terribly precise, because really it cannot be precise, but something like our standing in research scholarship and graduate education should be comparable to our standing in undergraduate education. Right? I mean, if we want to be a balanced research university with undergraduate education, I will talk about this balance, then these two should be at least comparable. So the question is, are they really of the same importance at Rice? So if you look at the V2C, and you can think right now the V2C is our set of strategic priority, then point number one is research and scholarship. So you could say that's the most important point at Rice. But it's not clear that we have achieved the proper balance between research and scholarship on one hand and focus on the graduate education on the other hand. So what is the indication that we have not reached the proper balance? One is you look at the ranking. In the ranking, you zoom into the numbers, and it's very clear that we are in the second decile because of undergraduate education. Pull it out, and we're not in the second decile. So that's an indication that we have yet to reach the proper balance. Another one. You all know how many undergraduate students there are at Rice. In fact, you can get administration to give you a briefing where they will report about undergraduate students to the second decimal point. We have a fraction of students, and they can report on them. Ask them, how many faculty members are there at Rice? Ooh, that's a much tougher question. Much harder to count faculty members. How many graduate students are at Rice? Much harder to get data. Now, I have to say, we have made a lot of progress on data, and data will come again. But we still have a long way to go about dealing data and acting on data, not just collecting data, but acting on data. So from the very beginning, Rice has had very high aspirations, no upper limits, okay, to infinity and beyond, if I can quote someone. But our aspirations have not always been matched by execution. How do you really go to the next level? What is it you have to do to go to the next level? Or for that matter, to stay in the current level. Because remember, if you don't make progress, you're falling behind. The president has talked about the breadth of our aspiration, how we want to do it all. This is very nice. We want it all, right? No compromise. We want to be small. We want to be deep. We want to be broad. We want to have many schools. We want research. We want undergraduate education. We want outreach to the community. We want art. We want everything. But in real life, we live in a world of finite resources, right? Sustainability is a key issue today in economics. So we have to think of finite resources and make tough decisions. You know, what are the priorities? What are the trade-offs? If you are not discussing trade-offs and priorities, you're not really an adult. Rice is a very pleasant place. It's a very, very collegial place. If at times it feels that I don't quite belong to Rice, it's because perhaps I'm not collegial enough. I'm too critical. We are averse to really openly discussing weaknesses and challenges. It's very nice to talk about successes. Everybody enjoys to talk about successes. But we are sometimes too congratulatory. And I talked recently to someone who was at Rice and left to another institution, not as distinguished at Rice. And he says, we are engaged here in much more self-reflection than I've ever seen at Rice. just self-reflection. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? We are distributed to the point of anarchy. What do I mean by that? We have a graduate program in computer science. I think it's fairly good. I don't think it is. I think it could be better. But actually, really, nobody knows. Outside the department, nobody really knows how well a graduate program is. How good is a graduate program in ECE? I don't really know. They know. Outside of that department, really very few people know. So we are running critical business here, and really there's just very little oversight. Nobody knows. There's no accountability, no really incentive for quality. Now, we started doing some reviews, and this now started to some accountability, but we have a long way to go. The budget is highly centralized. Probably only 3 people at Rice, I suspect, see the whole budget, probably the president, the provost, and our vice president for finance. But beyond that, not clear. Take, for example, we said that graduate studies is a strategic priority for Rice. How much do we actually invest in graduate education? You know, I see the annual statement. It's from this. It's impossible to know anything. And it's not clear who does see it. So there is really no real discussion. Are we investing enough in graduate education? Are we over-investing? How do we compare to our peers? Without some transparency, it's impossible to have discussions, long-term plans, and alignment with strategic priorities. So if we have to make tough decisions, and sometimes in organization you have to make tough decisions, it's not clear we have the right culture, the structure, and the data to make difficult, informed strategic choices. So we make choices all the time, but it's not clear we can do it in a purely informed way. So let's look at, for example, data about faculty. So very important question to faculty, and I'll come back to it, is, you know, the main hope for faculty quality is tenure. How many people, what percentage of people who come to us as assistant professor get tenure? Turns out it's impossible to get the answer to that. Why? We can actually know how many people every year are submitted to P&T and how many get tenure. That's easy to measure. But all kind of people drop along the way. And they drop along the way, sometimes for personal reasons. And then you say, you know, two-body problem, all kind of things happen, people move. Or they drop out of the way because some department told them, you know, we are advising you to look for another job. This is not likely you are going to get in tenure. Okay? So when you ask people, people say, oh, many people are advised to leave. There's no data. We really don't know what percent of people at Rice really succeed from coming here to getting tenure. A few months ago, a friend of mine gave me a booklet, a report from Northwestern, and the report was a report on research report from Northwestern, the vice president for research. And she gave it to me for 2 reasons. One is her daughter was on the cover. She's a faculty member at Kellogg, so she was very proud of her daughter. And she said, look, you will find lots of data about Rice. I said, Rice? This is a Northwestern report. She said, oh, look inside, look inside. So I look inside, and they're benchmarking themselves against many peers, and they consider us as one of the peers. So they have lots of metrics. You know, it was academy member, career award, NSF graduate fellowship, and on and on and on. And I looked at it and said, my goodness, I will be hard-pressed at Rice to find all this data in one place. It just, you know, this is all public data. All you have to do is assemble it. And I have to go to Northwestern Report to find the data about Rice. So without some metrics, what is the next level? How do we know when we get there? Almost every school at Rice have some weak programs. And it's incredibly hard to do anything about it. I mean, last week, there have been some attempt in humanities to deal with it, and there's some kerfuffle about that. But generally, every school, you take every dean quietly aside, and every dean would say, yeah, I have some weak programs. It's just very hard to do something about it. What is to do something? You know, invest more, make it stronger, decide to cut your losses, do something. Very hard to do it at Rice. So this process that we just started now in the last pretty much 2 years of doing departmental reviews, we think it's excellent, it's very good. It has to be expanded. It shouldn't be applied only for departments. Schools should be reviewed as well. But in particular, I can think of important offices that are really part of the academic enterprise. And it's not clear why, once you are in Allen Center, you suddenly are immune to any kind of review and accountability. So we have to think more carefully about this. And one of the things we lack at this point is some kind of a systematic process. So I just went and spent 5 minutes on Google, and I find how Cornell does it. And it's a process. It's not just something they do, but they have a process. What is the process? There is a semi-standardized self-study template that every department has to follow, and with then some specific questions for the department. The visiting committee issue its report. The department has to respond. The dean has to respond. It goes to the university committee. They analyze it. They send a report to the provost. A follow-up plan is agreed on. Something happens. Otherwise, you can very easily have external visit, issue a report, and then absolutely nothing needs to happen. Unless you have a culture of execution, nothing may happen. We can do a lot of report, and it's not clear what the outcome will be. And I've seen such at Rice reports that everybody said, very nice, very nice. Now let's go on with work. Forget about it. We are done. Check. We can move on. So we have to start thinking that faculty members at Rice are accountable. So what does it mean? Well, they submit a report every year, and they get at least a minimum. The raise is some indication of how well the university thinks you are doing. And this accountability has to spread beyond faculty member. It has to be true for everybody who has an important position. And it's not just a report to your boss, but if you look at a department chair and a dean, well, really each one of them has two bosses, right? A boss up and a boss down, right? A chair should be accountable to the faculty, and a dean should be accountable to the faculty as well. And while it could be, I could very well see that there should be one part of the report should be private to your superior, but the rest should be, right now, dean have to write a report every 5 years. And that makes no sense to me, every 5 or just once in 5 years to write a report. When I was the chair and I wrote a report, I was waiting for some comments. And I got none. And one summer I got too busy, and I just kept pushing off the dean secretary. I said, I'm too busy, I'm too busy, I'm too busy. The summer passed. The next year started, and I discovered nothing happened if I didn't write a report. So I tried it again the next year, and nothing happened. Now, it seems that sometimes our dean have a hard time making tough decisions. And they're having a hard time tough decision because, guess what? You're making a tough decision, and there is a huge brouhaha. Nobody likes this tough decision. They're not going to be popular. Easy decisions can be popular. Tough decisions are rarely popular. And so there is always big brouhaha. And so we have to think of a way that facilitate deans making tough decisions. And that means that we have to think of mechanism whereby if they're going to make tough decisions, they have to get faculty, they have to build support in advance, both from below and from above. Okay? So when decision is made, faculty can say, yes, this makes sense, and administration, the provost can say behind, yes, this is not just a dean decision, the administration stands behind it. The budget process at Rice is something that we know some more than others. We have a feeling that it is rather opaque. It doesn't have much flexibility. For example, if I were to retire today, probably one could hire, let's say, 2 assistant professors with my salary. But right now at Rice, you can do that. Why? Because you can well argue, well, these 2 assistant professors will grow up and become full professor. But that will take another 10, 15 years. And by then, you can point out to other people that could retire. And so you actually faculty rejuvenation is become a very important issue because guess what? Because of the no mandatory requirement, the faculty is graying, and the retirement age has shifted from 65 to 70. And so to think how we do that and get more flexibility is incredibly important. And we must inject some flexibility into the process. I want to talk about the faculty, because the faculty is when you talk about, there is a famous story about Isaac Rabi who told Eisenhower, the faculty is the university. If we're talking about Rice going to the next level, it's not about research cost accounting, with all due respect, going to the next level, as important as it is. It's not about IT becoming better. Ultimately, it's about the faculty getting better. So this is our most precious resource. So you can think, okay, who is in charge? Okay? And the answer is, everybody's in charge. The provost is in charge. The president, of course, I left the president, I'm sorry. The president would argue he's in charge as well. Every dean, every chair, everyone, and that means, in some sense, no one. No one here has a job of the stewardship of the faculty. Okay? We have vice provost academic affairs, but that has never been defined as primary responsibility of the job, the stewardship of the faculty. So again, we talked about data about the faculty. For example, we can tell exactly how many undergraduate students we try to recruit, how many of them accepted the offer, and those that didn't, where did they go? Now let's look. Every year we make about 20 to 30 faculty offers. How many are accepted? And those that don't accept, where do they go? I mean, the only way to know it is go department by department and find out from them. But nobody does it. So we have no picture, for example, how competitive are we when we try to hire? We spend enormous amount of time fine-tuning processes, like the tenure process. You know, exactly what should be the voting procedures and what should be the process for dealing with conflict of interest. And these are incredibly important. I'm not trying to belittle them. But ultimately, there are means to an end, and the ends to tenure the right set of people at Rice, people where it's worthwhile to make an investment in them for the next 30 years. And there's very little discussion on that. There's very little discussion. Are we tenuring the right people? And the answer is, in some cases, you know, you look at how people, you know, look at P&T, and sometimes P&T vote overwhelmingly for, sometimes they vote overwhelmingly against, and sometimes, you know, it's a committee of 9 people and have different opinions. When you look at the distribution of the votes, you know, they are equivocating. And in some sense, you know, our message to the president is, if you're going to make mistakes, err on tenure denial. Because yes, sometimes you deny tenure to someone and this person goes somewhere else, and this is prove him or herself to be a fantastic scholar. But that's 1% of the cases, if that much. Most of the case is the other way around. Because there's no mentor required anymore, an academic career now is almost about 40 years now. Give or take. I mean, this varies. But you can imagine someone who comes here around age 30, let's say 30 to 35, and then the next 10, 15 years, they'll be busy reaching clear milestones. Clear milestones are assistant professor wants to get tenure, become associate professor wants to become full professor. Then what happened after that? After that, it's a very long stretch with no clear milestones. I mean, if you compare yourself to other people's other career, right, you have to be a postman to have a career of 30 years with no clear milestone. Okay? And even though if you actually look, there are more professorial ranks, because there are named professors, and then there are various fancy-sounding titles, but there's no process. These are titles that one gets somehow by some mysterious process. There's really it's not a clear career ladder that one has a clear notion, here is how I accept to somehow move along my career. And we really, once somebody becomes full professor, we shake their hand, congratulations, see you at your retirement party. That's pretty much what we do. There's no attempt to look at people and see how can you foster them to become better and greater. When you look at the set of deans currently at Rice, all the deans have been externally hired, all the deans. Now, I was hired from outside, so I would like to think that sometimes there is value in such a hire, even though maybe not everybody will agree with it. But if it happens systematically, they are only bringing deans from outside, presidents only from outside, provosts always from outside. If you look at any other organization that would do that, you say, you guys are getting an F on leadership development. So we are getting an F, in my opinion, on leadership development. It happens. Some people become chairs, then they become deans, but there's no attempt to think of people, okay, who you think is going to be promising, what kind of experience will be useful to prepare them for this. Very little of that, or nothing of that really happens here. So this recommendation that actually has already been accepted, even though we have not yet issued it formally, but once I did discuss it with the president and the provost, it's a kind of a no-brainer to look right now. People look at what Paula Saunders right now is doing, and they say, this is not a job for one person. So even though she's now done it for 3 years, actually she's the first one to say, this is not a job for one person. So we've been discussing, and this requires further discussion. We put it in quotes, Dean of the Faculty, because not everybody thinks that this is necessarily the right title, and we'll have to think about it. But Princeton has Dean of the Faculty, and this is job description. I won't read it. But essentially, Dean of the Faculty is a person whose main responsibility is the stewardship of the faculty. That's the job of that person, which something at Rice we really don't have. So I know that over the coming summer, there will be further effort work and try to develop more formally what should this position be at Rice, because the history of this position is it occurred just haphazardly. Jean Levy hired Carol Quillen. Suddenly we heard that there is Vice President for Academic Affairs. Carol left, and suddenly we heard that Paula Saunders is taking this job. But this job has never been a serious discussion of what it should be. So I've heard many presentations over the years, and Rice has very proudly described how over the last 10 years, we have doubled our research funding. And this sounds very impressive until you ask, how did everyone else do? So if you look in the ranking of university by research funding, we've actually slid. We slid probably not because we fell down, but because other places ran faster than us. And there's actually a very nice way and somebody did very nice analysis to try to measure it. And the question was, what percentage of the total federal R&D pie are we getting at Rice? And that turns out to be an amazingly stable number. It's about 0.2% for the last 20 years. It has not changed much. It fluctuates about 0.18, 0.19, so it does make a difference, but not dramatically. And that means when our research funding has doubled, it's because the pie has doubled. It's not that necessarily we have done something that should be, we have not fallen behind, we can say that. But it's not clear that we have really changed something dramatically. And the reality is that it's very rare that faculty productivity, more broadly, not just funding, is a topic of really of institutional concern. So there is a talk every year, the chairs and the dean talk about what did this person do, what did this person do. But it's very rare that anybody, in fact, nobody has ever sat with me at Rice and said, okay, let's look at your research productivity. I tried to do it once with a full professor, did not go when I was chair, did not go well. Let's put it this way. So somehow it is viewed as, is stepping on people's toes, academic freedom. We shouldn't talk about the productivity. And this is nonsense. Now, we're a place where the data actually screams at you that Rice is weak is in large research centers, okay? So Woody Allen said that showing up is 90% of winning. So why don't we have more research centers? It's not because we are losing the game. We're not showing up. So it's not we can look and to see how many big proposals have we submitted and how many we have won, and maybe we need to learn how to write better proposals. We're not submitting these proposals. We're not writing them. It seems that there are really few incentives. Writing such a proposal is a huge job. Actually, the odds of succeeding are low. In terms of money, I've been involved in so-called NSF expedition, and it's a $10 million, but it's divided across so many people that at the end, I don't really get more money than I would have gotten by writing individual proposal, and it's much more work, both preparing the proposal and more reporting, more webinars, more conferences, more meetings. But on the other hand, it gives you a tremendous amount of visibility. That's how universities make themselves visible today, and that's where much of the money is. So we have to stop treating faculty productivity as a private matter, that at most it's a hush, in hush conversation between a chair and a dean. Okay? This is something I can tell you when you're in industry. It's a completely standard. Every year you meet with your manager and they speak. Okay, what did you do this year? What could you do better? It's a completely conventional occurrence. I'm not saying we have to be a corporation, but we have to stop treating this as a private matter. For example, I have no idea what is the funding productivity of other faculty members in my department. I just don't know. Now, probably this is all public information. I could find out if I really want to spend the time, but it's not clear why it should not be an annual report. Here is how everyone in the department is doing in terms of funding, in terms of students. None of that is private data. And really, the job is on chairs and dean to conduct conversation with faculty, to create expectations, especially with full professor. If you want full professor to submit center proposal, we have to create expectations, provide resources, incentives, and encouragement. Okay? So when I won the expedition, and there was a press release about it, and I got one congratulatory note. It was from Jim Coleman, who already has left Rice. And he saw the press release, and he sent me a congratulatory note. Congratulations on winning this expedition. So it's even worse when you spend an enormous amount of effort and you don't win, which is the common occurrence. the majority of time you don't win. It's just too hard. And at this point, what you hear, the thundering silence, it's incredibly discouraging. Other places have done very well by creating an office of research development. So where we all think of development as something singularly suited to philanthropy. But there is now a profession of research development officers. We discovered that we didn't know that, but Jan found out that he's a research development professional. And now there is a professional society, there are conferences, you can go, and other places realize that to succeed in research, you have to invest in research development, the way we do with philanthropy. And we really have not done it in a serious way. PhD programs are a critical component of any top research university. This is clearly true in science and engineering. You cannot have a top program without a top graduate program. I think it's less important in the humanities, and it's probably somewhere in between in social sciences. I don't know exactly where we would put it. Now, if we want to improve the faculty, let's say by raising tenure standards, it will take 10, 15, 20 years to really have a measurable impact. This is a slow process. Once you're giving someone tenure, they're here for 30 years. Graduate students change, the cycle is much, much faster. So people say, oh, to recruit better students, you need better faculty. But this is a virtuous cycle. You invest a little, you invest some, you do better job in recruiting, you get better students. If you get better students, your faculty are more productive. If they're more productive, they're going to attract better students. You have to boot up. You have to start investing in making emphasis on graduate education. So we think this is the high point of leverage for investment. If there's any place we need to invest to rise research profile and research scholarship, it's graduate education. And it's unfortunate we only half-time dean, and really we need to have a full-time dean. And we need to go beyond the focus on processes. I was the chair of the Graduate Council for 4 years. And I really had a high ambition that we really will dig into, really look at graduate programs and see how good they are. There are so many demands on you on the process side. You have, design a process for dismissing graduate students. Design a process for approving dual degree between Rice and international partners. Deal with a new PhD program, a proposal for a PhD program in art history. On and on and on. Did you really have no time to deal with substance of graduate programs on the ground or recruiting? So as a result of our deliberation, Seiichi took the initiative and organized a science-wide or chemistry and physics. Who did you combine there? All science recruiting event. Well, now you have scale. Now you can put resources. Now you can do it not in some Mexican restaurants, but in the Museum of Natural Science. Now you can bring the president. Now you can bring the faculty member. And suddenly you have a very serious event. And I think we will have to see how it works out, but at least we're trying something different that you cannot do on your own. You cannot do it only at the level of individual department. And I said before, graduate programs are opaque. They're rarely reviewed outside department. There are no metrics and really no standards. It's only when things get into a crisis that suddenly we say, oh, we must do something about, when a program is really, really weak, then we say, let's do something. But the point is not only to have extra weak programs, but to have a lot of excellent programs. There are many, many urgent priorities. Probably the top one is the funding level. Are we investing enough in graduate education? In some PhD programs, the stipends are not competitive enough. And the result is you probably are not getting the top students, you're getting second-rate students. And again, instead of being a virtuous cycle, it's a vicious cycle. And I can go on. There is a long list here, and I don't want to spend all the time, because more important is that we have a full-time graduate dean who's dedicated to not just having good processes, but actually get into the substance, how to build strong graduate programs. But it cannot be only at the level of a graduate dean, because at Rice is about 50 graduate programs, and you can't really expect one dean and one office to really deal with the details of every program. And it shouldn't all happen in the center. It should happen in the schools. Okay? So I was just attended last week a board meeting of the Southeastern University Research Association, and I was talking to this vice president or vice provost, and I said, okay, what's your structure for oversight of graduate program? He said, graduate program belong to the dean. The graduate dean it's an administrative office, and I asked, how do they liaison? He said every school has an associate dean for graduate education, and this set of associate deans sit regularly with the graduate dean, and they constitute an administrative graduate council. And so there's ongoing conversation about graduate education. At Rice, when there was a decision to terminate a graduate program, the dean of graduate studies was not in the loop. So it means we have to get our processes to align. And the reality is that, and this actually something I think is what happened actually in the School of Humanities in the past week, is in some sense, at least in principle, along the right way, that if you don't have enough money to invest in all of your graduate program, you may decide, you know what, we can't staff all these graduate programs. Maybe we should shut down some of them and use the money to strengthen other graduate programs. These are tough decisions, but this is what I call adult decision. You have to look at your finite resources and decide where to invest them. Undergraduate research at Rice, we think, is just a missed opportunity, because we have fantastic students. And you ask now, with all the turmoil about that's happening in education, the cost of education, and online education, you should ask yourself, why should people come to spend a lot of money and time to be in a research university, as opposed to, let's say, they probably will get, I suspect if you go to Harvey Mudd, you'll get better instructions than you're getting at Rice. Why should you come to Rice and not to Harvey Mudd? And the only answer I can give is because you're coming to a research university. And that means we need to get our students involved in research. And in fact, we're doing it in many, many ways. But it's a little bit like Mark Twain said, right? It's easy to quit smoking. I've done it 100 times. We have a whole bunch of different programs for involving students in undergraduate research. No coherence, very few resources, no coordination between them, no oversight. So you can't look at it and say Rice has a coherent program of undergraduate research. Some departments do a fantastic job. Other departments don't do such a fantastic job. And again, no one knows the difference. So we have to think, we have to create some governance structure for undergraduate research, from the department to the school and across the university. And ultimately, there is a dean of undergraduate students at Rice. And so this is naturally the position that should have responsibility for the whole undergraduate research enterprise. It doesn't take much. You go on the web and you find MIT and Caltech, and you see some really impressive looking programs. And then you go to our web pages, and you weep, really, at the comparison. So if you stop to think a little bit about this, you realize there are some common themes here. Now, this is the first bullet is a bit unexpected. It will come from a group of faculty members. Okay, but you know, management is like everything in life, right? It's all about finding the right balance. Right? A place could be overmanaged, okay? I mean, I've seen places where employees have to write weekly reports every week. What have you done for us this week, right? Places can be overmanaged, but you can be undermanaged, okay? If you have a department, you just think of your department, think, let's suppose we don't have a department chair. We do everything as a faculty committee. You can imagine, it will be total chaos. So the answer is we need to find the right level of management. You know, it's all about the delicate balance. And right now, our feeling is that the pendulum has swung too much. There is too little management. There is a curious thing that I noticed recently. I would suspect that it is well known. I won't make a comment here, but the majority of faculty tend to be liberal. The numbers are very high, 70, 80% of faculty, with the exclusion of an economist. They're liberals. That is, they believe that central government can do good, properly discussed with democracy, but central government can do good and can do things that the people themselves cannot do. Then it comes to academic management, and all faculty members become libertarians, right? They don't want no government whatsoever. But Rice started from a small university and has not adapted itself. It's not so small anymore, okay? We have close to 1,000 faculty members on campus. If you count also non-tenured people, we have close to 1,000 people on campus. It's not a small enterprise anymore. And we have to design this proper management structures. And you know, you need management because you need to align individual goals and institutional goals. And they only happen if you have a structure for doing this alignment. And on university, this is called shared governance. You need to have the proper interaction between faculty, and nobody enjoys serving on committees, but this is a necessary part of running a modern university. And we need administrators who are responsible and accountable. Now, it's easy to come up with but. There are many buts, okay? Whenever if you put accountability, you have to make sure the accountability is aligned with authority, resources, and processes, because it's easy. In some cases, we have accountability, but we've not created the authority and resources. We have to figure out, for example, we have a graduate PhD programs belong to departments and deans at Rice, but we have a graduate dean. What's the proper relationship between this overlapping authority? We've never worked it out. When you talk to the people in charge, they actually don't know who has proper authority. Okay? We have to sit down and figure out the same thing. If you will have vice provost of academic affairs that have stewardship of the faculty, how is that related to deans? We have to work out what is the proper way to manage overlapping responsibility. Accountability is not cost-free. There are places where they are so accountable, there's no time to do any real work. You spend all the time on accountability. Okay? Some state places, some state universities. Accountability has what I call intimidating cost. Some people are afraid to make bold decision, because bold decision invariably piss off some people. And there are some arguments that the current dean review process is intimidating. It scares deans from taking bold actions. And so the answer is there's no formula how to structure a university. Every structure has its pluses and minuses, and what we have to do is continually experiment. So we experimented in putting both graduate dean and vice provost of academic affairs in one person. Now we know this experiment has failed. Now we need to do something else, but then we need in 5 years to go and examine it and say, have we done the right thing? Is it working? We tend to do it twice. We tend to do what's called launch and forget. Let's do something and then let's not worry about it, which it stays for 20 years. And I want to go back talking about the faculty, because if you see what we are saying here, what we are saying is that we need more management. We also need more faculty input in things. And when you sit in various university committees, you see pretty much the same faces. There are about 10% of the full professors who are actually involved at university level. So you run into them in committee after committee, and they all feel overworked, overburdened, and underappreciated. So if we really want this to be truly shared governance, we have to recognize this workload. I served, for example, once on P&T, and I said, this is an impossible workload to do it on top of everything else. I said, how can you ask someone to put for 2 months, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours a week on top of everything else with no reduction in load elsewhere? So we have to rethink the incentive system here to get people involved in faculty leadership. Research infrastructure is, for science and engineering, it is clearly critical. For the humanities, it takes other form. It has other kind of resources, digital resources, library. Social science, again, will be somewhere in between. And we really don't have a global view how well we are doing. A few years ago, Jean Levy and I went to visit Technion in Israel to visit their nanotechnology operation. And we came out really humbled. The level of instrumentation they have, they say, this is the instruments we give every undergraduate student experience with, was something that our postdocs don't have access to this equipment here at Rice. And at the same time, we've been struggling now for 10 years to build research computing at Rice. And it's always by begging, cheating, and stealing, essentially. And so we have no sustainable funding model. And again, this is something that's necessary to run a modern university. And we don't have concrete recommendation here other than some people need to dig deeper into this and figure out where are we, how are we doing compared to our competitors, how do they fund their operations, and how do we do it in a sustainable way. And this is something that you're not done. We have to report on this the same we do with building. For building, we have deferred maintenance. We have to think of the research enterprise and think, what is its status every year, the same way you do with buildings. Now some people have looked at this particular bullet and said, you have gone off the reservation. And yes, we have gone off the reservation, because this is about the business processes. But the business process is something that we have to do on a daily basis. If you have a grant, you have to do all the what's called post-award accounting. You have to do travel. You have to do research cost allocation. You have to do effort reporting. And we are all, the feeling is, and none of us is expert in business processes, but the feeling is that we are dealing with very cumbersome information system, and we are dealing with very inefficient business processes, and data is incredibly hard to find. Staffing, the feeling is that it is very lean in some places and maybe overstaffed in other places. But we think that the only way we really find out about it is getting someone from outside RISE to come and take a look and say, okay, look at our administrative and business processes, structure and staffing, and this cannot be done internally. You must get outside consultant to come and do that. From the 7 schools at RISE, actually 8 if you take continuing studies, the 4 academic schools, science and engineering, has always been the strong schools at RISE. But even there, you don't really see them in top 25. So if we think ourselves as a top 25 university, that's where we should see our school, in top 25. Humanities and social science, they are less strong, and everybody knows it, but as soon as you say that, people get offended. So let's get over the offense and figure out how to strengthen them. Okay, they are here. RISE made the decision to be university, and we need to strengthen them, and so they will be at a comparable level. Our professional schools actually are doing better in some sense. The school of the business school is a remarkable success story. When I came to RISE, it was essentially a failure, and now they are a nationally ranked business school. Almost every academic school at RISE has some department that are small, not very strong, unlikely to become stronger, unlikely to become top programs. And we really have to figure out a way of dealing with this. We must go back to think not only of excellence at the department level, but at the school level. We must review school and figure out how to strengthen our schools. We must have hard conversation. Everybody hates making any kind of organizational change. But we seem to be stuck sometimes in status. We must figure out how to solve some of these organizational issues. And we must establish metric. It's much easier in science and engineering. It's much harder in the humanities. But even there, the idea is not to compare the humanities to science. You don't look how much money they bring. You look how much money they bring compared to other humanities schools. Because there are grants even in the humanities. So I recently had to, in some place, I had to evaluate people in the humanities. So out of curiosity, I decided to look at citations, because they always tell us citations are relevant to people in the humanities. Guess what? Some of them are very well cited. So I think it's the people that are not cited are saying the citations are not important. Now you can go back and look at our recommendations, and you see that many of them would take resources. They would take money. Everything would take some money. And nowadays, if you go and you ask for money, you hear, not here. We don't have any. It's tight. The economy, Europe, Cyprus, no money. And so this is really true. In the short term, there is no money. But if you look now over the past 10 years, we raised almost $1 billion. We have invested almost $1 billion in buildings, in construction projects. Okay? This is not dollar per dollar. I mean, I don't want to send this impression. But the point is, we're able to raise a substantial amount of resources, and we're able to execute on a very large scale when it comes to buildings. Okay? And so we need to go back and start thinking about what do we want to do over the next 10 years. Some of you may have attended a Bert McMurtry presentation in the Lung Conference about 2 or 3 years ago, The Future of the Research University, and he talked about Stanford's capital campaign. And he said, well, it took 2 years before they launched the campaign. First of all, everybody had a wish list, and they put it all on the table. It was $8 billion. And they have decided a priori it's going to be a $4 billion campaign. So they spent 2 years blooding each other, fighting over who wins and who loses. And they end up with $4 billion. And then they went and raised $6 billion because they had such a fantastic list of projects. And that's what we need to do. And of course, the hard issue is going to be not what we want to do. Everybody can dream. What is it we're not going to do? Because at the end of the day, you have to make some choices. So there you have it. This is that we think what has to be done. We need to have a comprehensive approach. We need to be detailed rather than vague. And much of the V2C right now, these are general goals, and they are very laudable. but they are somewhat vague. We must think long-term rather than short-term. Structure and processes are critical. Human and organizational capital ultimately is what will change what RISE is. And we need more management, but we need good management. Good management means responsibility and accountability. And we need to identify needs and resources. This is the list again. I'm repeating the list of recommendations. Put full-time people in charge of the academic affairs on one hand and graduate dean on the other hand. Systematize the review process, strengthen the schools, improve our business processes, and do a need-based campaign. Now, this is a recommendation not so much for this, but more for the Senate, is that the question is, what happens after we issue this report? How do we make sure that this report, most reports, you understand, are just filed away. The fate of a typical report is a place on the shelf. And the question is, how do we assure that something actually does happen with this report? I like to finish with a picture that I like very much. This is Odysseus and the sirens. And so this is a story in Greek mythology. Odysseus heard that the sirens singing is very beautiful, and he wants to listen to it. But he knows that it's so beautiful that once you hear it, you never want to leave. And he also wants to go home. So he's very smart. Odysseus is always been the smart one. So he arranged for a whole structure. He ties himself to the mast. He has his sailor tie him to the mast. He tells them they'll have to put wax in their ears so they will not hear the sirens. And he swears that whatever he asks, they will never release him. So that's what they do. And then they go. He hears the sirens. He begs to be released because he wants to stay with the sirens. But of course, the sailors have vowed that they will not release him. So what did he do here? He built a structure for self-management. He had a goal. He figured out what his weaknesses are going to be, and he built a structure to compensate for his weaknesses. And that's why self-management is crucial. In every talk, you must have a Chinese proverb. If you want 1 year of prosperity, grow grain. If you want 10 years of prosperity, grow trees. If you want 100 years of prosperity, grow people. Thank you very much.
I'm going to say too many things. It was a great talk. I mean, I needed this, okay? I came in just today just for your talk. It was worth it. I'll go back and tell my wife it was absolutely worth it. It was great.
But.
No, but I just want to add to, I've been here a long time. Awareness, okay? So recently, I want to talk about awareness in two components very quickly. One is, okay, we talk about underrepresented minority faculty. Recently, I told our provost, who I'm very fond of, that the Division of Natural Sciences has never, in the history of Rice, had an underrepresented minority faculty member in a tenure-track position. In a tenure-track position.
Yeah.
The Division of Natural Sciences, okay? Engineering has never had a woman underrepresented, okay? And then, in the humanities, we never had a tenured Mexican-American woman, but now we have Ruth Lopez Turley. Well, George was shocked. He was shocked. He said, I don't believe it. Well, George, check it. It's true, okay? And yet, here we are proud of the things we're doing, and yet there's no one of the quality of Rice that could have such a negative record on that, okay? But then awareness. Also, so we didn't bet, but then I had two other administrators here at Rice that I made bets with, and that had to do with members of National Academy comparing Rice to University of Texas, okay? And I watched where UT has been growing. And every time you talk about Rice, somebody says, oh yeah, in absolute numbers, but percentage-wise, okay? So I argued with one administrator about percentage of National Academy of Science. And in fact, Bob Curl and Jim Kinsey here for a while were essentially the only two. And they would argue percentage-wise. They lost that, okay? I won, okay? And so I won a meal that I'd never collected, okay? Then I did the same thing with engineering, okay? And again, I won. So there's an awareness, a lack of awareness on the part of the administration that we have such great big zeros, okay? And that, we're this good school. We are a great undergraduate school. But all of a sudden, 3 administrators and I have had discussions on things that they should have been totally aware of. But I'm not going to fault them for that, okay?
There are no numbers. Nobody sees the numbers. Easy to ignore that.
But, so here's the one that really, so I built, a life here building a department. And at one time, then Provost Bill Gordon said, Richard, this is when I was building mathematical sciences and CAM. He said, I compliment you on not only building one of the best departments at Rice, but my favorite department, okay? And I said, thank you. But look, so we hired good young people. We built them, we trained them, we did all the good things. We were bringing them to the next level. But we lost 3 who all eventually became members of National Academy of Sciences. Now we're going to lose 2 who will become members of National Academy. So it wasn't so much there of rising to the next level. It's taking the level we were at and maintaining it, and say, now, they were never issues of dollars. Of all the 5 people we lost, it was never an issue of dollars, and they did love Rice, but it was the quality of the professional life that they were going to have here. That's it. That's what I'm thinking about every day, Moshe.
Yep. I mean, there is I believe in Department of Humanities where they told me they have lost, over the last 20 years, every person that received tenure left for about almost 20 years. Philosophy? Philosophy, which department? I think philosophy.
Close to, Moshe, close to.
Close to?
We kept one.
Okay, good for you.
So far.
I know you love a good-spirited conversation, so I've been an administrator for the last 5 years and a faculty member for a long time. So I'll give you a view maybe that some of your faculty colleagues seeing this might think. And this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but we'll see if I can get a discussion going. So if I kind of see the summary of your discussion on there, that is, I think we're undermanaged and we need to invest more in administration, and that the faculty need more review, department schools. What if I posit the second thing? What if we review the administration more and we invested more in faculty? Because in my experience at Rice is at the end of the day, it's the folks at the bottom level that are doing the real work that makes the university valuable in there. And that I realize having better running administration is good, but I'm worried that just adding administration at the end of the day is going to be kind of an unwise investment of our resources.
So I know David Lebron a few years ago, and I told him he's overhead. So I agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, the only honest work done in this university, we always need to remember it, is teaching, learning, and research. That's what institutions are for. Everything else is overhead. So this talk is overhead in some ways, right? Everything is overhead on the real work. So one is that I think we need more management. I think we need better management as well. So when I talk we need more reviews and more accountability, it's not only on the academic side. One of the things that we have done with Create Accountability is an academic matter. Accountability has to be a university matter. I mean, I don't see why we have the office of OGPS. Okay, there is an office. They have a very important function of this university. We have to figure out how do we know that they're doing a good job. And you can think of other places. So if you look at the slide where we talked about it, it's actually very clear: department, units, offices. Okay. Now I don't know that we're in position to review, necessarily the custodial operations, but in some sense, does Rice have good custodial operations? Okay. And so this is a broad question. So I completely agree with you. So the answer about accountability and management is, it's all about, it's like the Constitution starts by talking about a more perfect union. What about a perfect union? Well, a more perfect union, okay? So we can look at some area. We could decide, I can imagine you say in some areas we have, for example, right now, every year we have to fortunately, you've asked us one report less, but last year I had to write 3 reports, right? One to the provost, one to the dean, and one to the chair. So mercifully, now this year it has gone down to 2. But we have a faculty information system that we all spend much time putting information into. The faculty hate it. The dean said it's not really any good. The provost says it's not really any good. And we just continue to feed the beast, right? So we should look at some administration and say it doesn't do any useful function. So we have to, I understand your sentiment, right? It's very easy just to go and do administration for the sake of administration. So we have to think, where does it provide value and where does it provide value, okay? But the reality is, look, I'm a faculty member. People don't like to be managed, okay? And nobody likes. So there is a reflexive reaction. I don't want to be managed. But the point is, we have to find the gentle way of managing people for the good, sometimes even for their own good. Okay, so I can think of a faculty member in engineering who is, let's say, about 50 years old and seem to have stopped doing research. Why? Because you get a sequence, you fail, you write a grant, you get 1 failure, 2 failures, 3 failures, 4 failures, 5 failures. Boy, it gets a bit depressing. So you find other ways to channel your energy. Pretty soon you have no students. Pretty soon you're not doing research. If you do it for 5 years, you're dead as a researcher. So we could say, oh, well, it's their decision. But this person is tenured. This person is going to be here for another 20 years. Or we can figure out, can we help this person? Maybe some investment, some seed funding from us will help this person go and resuscitate himself as a researcher. So that's where I think management can provide value.
So I take it that today we can actually break out of the mold and be critical openly, right? Like you and I normally do. So I actually very much agree. And I don't think that we are undermanaged. I would say that most of the time we're either mismanaged or erratically managed. In fact, especially when I was, for example, at the Carbon Nanotechnology Laboratory, I've had many, many times when I was trying to do things and I didn't even need resources, and I had things in the way. And one big fear that I have with adding more administrative positions was something that I realized during the search that brought McClendon here, which is I went to Lebron's office hours, and this was at the same time the merger was being discussed. And I asked him this question: how many of your deans, provosts, and president made tenure at a university that we consider our peer? And he didn't have that data, but this is not that many people. The answer was he was the only person at the level of dean, provost, or president who had become tenured professor at a university that we consider our peer. So not only there is an issue of not developing your leadership, but it is problematic when consistently in that period we were hiring leaders from universities which are deficient compared to us on those axes of research leadership. So I don't think we were being undermanaged. Some critical decisions have been going wrong. On the matter of data, I also agree with you that we don't keep data, and some data, they won't give them to us. I mean, for example, it's impossible to get research funding data. But on the other hand, there is a lot of data now that we can get for public databases, the same way you did for example, when you were doing that review of a humanities program. For example, for science and engineering, I have scripts for Web of Science that gave me continuously, essentially, anytime I want, data on anybody I want at Rice. I haven't had very interesting discussions like when we were doing the Israeli initiative, and people were saying it's impossible to know who collaborates with Israel. And during that same meeting, after 3 minutes, I say, well, Moshe Vardi has 4 papers with this guy and this other guy, and I have 2. And very quickly, you can find a lot of these things. I think the problem is there is an unwillingness to use the data much more than a paucity of data.
So I don't want to make comments on, we tried very hard to this be not a criticism of individuals. This is institutional criticism. So I don't want to make comments on existing deans. I would just say that if you look at the set of deans that we have, they are all from outside. So right now at Rice, deans, with the exception of our vice provosts and central deans, are local. But all of our school deans, our provosts, our presidents, are all from outside. And when you look at this, you say this institution is not developing their own talent. I actually think that there is something really wrong with our search processes, okay? And the way we do searches are such that everybody familiarity breeds contempt, right? Everybody that is here, you know them for good and for bad, right? And guess what? None of us is perfect. So you start putting these people discuss, and then, but you pissed off, and the list of people, for example, I pissed off in this university is long, stand in line, okay? And so, on the other hand, the new people, well, guess what? It's like a first date. It's exciting, right? They put their suit on, they're in best behavior, and you only see the strength. Only then they show up, and people discover they're just imperfect as the rest of us. So I think that's really good for institution once in a while to get outside blood and outside ideas. But when this is the only way it happens, I would say something is fundamentally wrong, not only with the way we develop leadership, but also with the way we do searches, in my opinion. And I think part of what you discussed is an outcome, what I think, of a flawed search process, in my opinion. We've professionalized it, and we have taken the vetting, essentially. We have in many of the searches, we can do no vetting. Only the search firm can do the vetting. And so we have taken the most important thing that we do all the time for every assistant professor hire. Whenever we do promotion, the vetting part is the critical part. And we've taken that and we outsource it in some of the most important appointments that we do at Rice.
Question back there.
Yeah. Wanted to compliment and congratulate you on your analysis, but I think you missed one segment of Rice, which I would title the research staff. You've discussed the undergraduates, graduates, and faculty. But my experience has been with the very productive faculty at Rice. They always have full-time research staff. And I don't think they could do their work without it. My belief is that if Rice is going to grow as a research university, you have to do more to help the faculty do research. And I don't see how you do that without creating and recognizing in a better way the research staff as it exists at Rice, maybe amplifying it.
So this issue of research staff actually came up in our conversation. Let's make it the last question because I see that people are starting to leave. This came up in our conversation, had to do, for example, with postdocs. Some people feel that at Rice we don't have as many postdocs as there are some in other places. But postdocs are almost never funded institutionally. They're almost always funded by people active research grants. And research staff, research scientists, they have to be funded by the research program. So if we are weak in that, it's a symptom of a weak funding program, okay? The truth of the matter, from individual grant, if I write grant for NSF, even a postdoc, it's hard to get. A research staff member, it's impossible to get. The only place where you can get these people is in large centers. So the fact that we are weak on research staff, I think, is also saying we are weak in large research centers. In fact, what we had in computer science, more research staff, was always in the context of large research centers. Let me close it here because it's past 5 o'clock. I would welcome comments by email, by any other means, and you can join us in the reception, and we can continue this conversation.
This program is protected by copyright and may not be redistributed in whole or in part without the express written consent of Rice University Digital Media Services.